And 9 times out of 10, the biggest thing is being able to put out there what you've accomplished, being able to know your value, and raising your hand for opportunity. I do tease women. I'm going to say this, Sean. I tease women a lot that we have this mindset, and I would love to know where it came from, is we have to have 100% everything kind of locked down before we proceed to the next.
Welcome to It's Settled, the MedRisk podcast. Each episode, we're going to dig into the humanity in workers' compensation and insurance claims, exploring the stories of injured people and those who support them, as well as the good work professionals are doing in the industry. And now, I invite you to join me, Sean Dean, General Counsel at MedRisk and the host of It's Settled. Now, it's settled. Let's get on to the episode. I'm very happy to welcome Danielle Lisenbey from MedRisk here. Danielle, so great to have you on the podcast today.
Well, good morning. Excited to be here, Sean.
And it's always interesting how I meet folks as future guests on the podcast. And I had Deb Livingston from Reemployability on, and we had a wonderful conversation about the current state of workers' compensation and how it seems to be moving towards an injured worker centric and focused industry, which we both agreed it was a great thing. But we also identified some problems around that area. And we got done with recording the podcast. It was weeks out from even issuing the episode, and she shot me a note. And Deb shot me a note with a quote from you. And that's how I came into contact with you. And I guess just as a way to sort of kick things off before we get into your background, I want to read this quote. And I hope it's okay that I'm reading this quote attributed to you. I think it's fantastic. It says, "We don't do a good job as an industry explaining the impact we can have on someone who's probably at one of their worst moments in their life because they had a major injury at work." And that was so profound to me. She sent it to me and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to this person. I need to meet Danielle. I don't know her. But then I started going on your LinkedIn and I'm like, oh my gosh, this person is an incredible leader and has a lot to say. And we have to have her on. So we're so appreciative that you could be here today. But it does seem like the industry is moving towards an injured worker focused paradigm. However, it seems like there's an aspect, and this is just me talking out loud from my vantage point. It seems like there is, in some regards, a missed opportunity for empathy. And that's exactly what you hit on there. You hit on the condition of someone who has gone through an injury, arguably one of the most difficult times in their life. Things are up in the air for them. They're not only physically hurt, but they have a family that they're trying to support. They're worried about getting back to work. They're worried about getting healthy. They're concerned about the status of their job. And I know probably to you, it's just a quote because it's a philosophy you hold, but it was really impactful for me to see someone who is at the C-suite level in the workers' compensation industry, recognizing this and admitting that there is a problem. So I guess that's a lot to open up with. But I guess before we get into your background,
but it isn't. It is, but it isn't. Right? To me, it's fairly simple. And what I would share with you is, I think part of it is for the fact that coming up through the ranks on the medical management side, you do come and look at things through a little bit different lens, right? Because you are dealing more with the medical component, the nursing side. So they get to look at it through a totally different lens than I would say on the claim side, which is looking at it probably more technical oriented. I have this technical process, and I think that's where the evolution is coming from, right? It all started out very claims oriented, very technical oriented, very state regulatory oriented. You got to check all these boxes, make sure all these things happen. And then you got to look at the mighty dollar and make sure you're taking care of the mighty dollar, which is important. I'm not saying it's not important. It's part of the equation. And then you start to see this slow evolution on the medical side, where indemnity used to be the greater cost versus medical. And now you see this pivotal shift occur. And I do believe as the companies that got better and better at the medical side, they realized that there's a healthy component that plays into it, which is the empathy card, right? If you truly are focused on the injured worker and how you can help them through all those things you rattled off, right? Whether it's what's going on with them physically, or mentally, or what's going on within their family dynamic, and you look at them as a holistic person, you still get a great outcome. So you still comply with all those technical things we just rattled off, but now you're focusing on the human element. And I do think as an industry, we're getting so much better at that. Not quite there, but I think we're so much better at it than we were, let's say 10, 20 years ago.
What do you think caused the shift? Agree with you 100%, because when I used to go to comp conferences, it would be like sessions on cost containment, lowering, keeping reserves down, trying to settle cases quicker, ways to reduce medical spend. It was all on the technical side relative to costs. And now you go to sessions and it's just like sessions on meeting the injured worker where they're at, empathy and claims handling, customer service skills. Like what was I can't quite pinpoint it, but there was definitely a shift. And I guess kind of what was the impetus behind that, do you think?
Yeah, listen, I would love to try to pinpoint exactly what happens, but I do think it goes back to, as an organization, as we all became more heavily involved on the nursing side of things and the case management side of things, I do believe that almost like spiral effect occurred. Again, it probably started out very technical around the medical, very technical, but nurses are naturally trained to have this empathetic side to them. And they naturally brought that to the table. And I think all of us as organizations, when we saw that filter into the equation and we saw, our field nurses or telephonic nurses, especially like our field nurses, sitting alongside the family and helping them understand what's going on and be there for the injured worker and explain to them the dynamic of workers' comp and what they're going through and what the doctor's saying to them. I think that's where the ultimate evolution started to occur. And as leaders, I think we all started waking up going, there's something here. There's something really good here that, again, helps the overall process, helps the person. So you can attack things at multiple angles. You can still look at things from helping reduce loss costs, but you can also, bring the human element to the table. So that's my personal opinion. I think that's where it helped. Now, I probably had a little bit of an advantage sitting in a seat where that's the avenue I came up the ranks through. So I got to see it happen almost naturally.
Well, I agree with you. I do think we can have our cake and eat it too in that regard. And I think that's a nice segue because I was coming in hot in the beginning. So let's talk about your upbringing and comp and where you came from. I mean, you have an incredible resume. I'm always curious how you got your first job in workers' compensation, because you've held some really incredible leadership positions, but like myself, it was a Bob Ross happy accident, and that's how a lot of folks are have found comp who are current leaders in the industry. The paradigm's changed a little bit. There's been a shift in better recruitment efforts and positioning workers' compensation as a career with a mission to help people. But Danielle, let's kind of dig into your background and how you found comp.
Okay, so I'm a happy accident as well. So engineering by education and schooling, did that for a few years out of school. My family had moved to Florida. I had stayed back in Illinois and said, why am I staying back in Illinois? Because it's not very warm here. Even though I love Illinois, it's one of my favorite places, good people, good food. But, family was drifting to Florida. So I decided to drift down there as well and had to find a job. So this will date me a little bit, but started looking through newspaper ads. And I had at least some team leader supervisory experience under my belt from my prior job. And so I answered an ad. I literally answered an ad for an operations supervisor position, went through the interview process, and the gentleman that chose me said, listen, I need your process mind because we just had been acquired by Kemper Insurance. We do the bill review and case management for them in 2 states, and the objective is to roll out 48 more states, which is a pretty large objective. So I need people here from a manpower perspective, but also process, because we need to make sure we're improving the process, which if you think about bill review back in those days, Sean, you probably do, we had 1 million data entry people, putting in every little piece and part, and really trying to run the gamut of how the nurse fits into the equation. So that's how I landed. In the industry, it's called Medical Audit Services, but it's acquired by Kemper Insurance, rolled out 58 states, and just came up through the ranks through that channel, primarily in bill review. Ultimately, case management became responsible for overall medical management, which then led to being CEO of Broadspire, which rolled off of Kemper. So yeah, I got reeled in. Happy accident. Got reeled in. Thought I'll be there 5 years, right, and figure it out. And here I am, almost 30 years later, still in the industry.
And so what's kept you here? What's kept you in comp?
Listen, it's really the people, 100% the people, the fact that you can truly make a difference, that you can make an impact. As an engineer, I feel there's always opportunity to improve and do things better. My dad was an HR executive, so I feel like my yin and yang are good. My dad was an HR executive, so it's about the people.
Yep.
My mom was in technology. She was a developer, so that ties well with my engineering and being able to pull those two together. I just quickly learned that it was a great industry that I can enjoy the folks I worked with and what I did and drive value, really bring value to the table. Hence, you probably see me kind of preach on LinkedIn to the next generation that there's so much opportunity here. I admit we don't do a good job with that, of letting people know what the opportunity is. But, if we could get that out there to other generations and folks that want something like that, it's there. It's so there.
It seems to be, to me, a common thread of folks who've been in the workers' compensation industry, who've risen the ranks and who've stayed. The common thread is always people. That's what they always say. It's what immediately came out of your mouth. That's why I started smiling. But I would submit for everyone's consideration that workers' compensation or claims in general, but work comp specifically, is still an industry that probably isn't one that a kid in the 5th grade is going, I want to be in work comp.
I didn't even know it existed in 5th grade, to be honest with you.
And to me, even on the services side, Mitros deals with helping injured workers post-settlement. It's still, for me, the big draw to come here and to do what I do every day is to help people who, like you say, are probably at one of their worst moments in their life because of their work injury. And to me, there's just nothing more rewarding than helping individuals and by extension, their families get through that period of time. So what are some of the things that we can do to better promote that in the industry? Because as you know, it's been the big sort of talk at work comp conferences and in blog articles is that we're losing incredibly experienced folks to attrition because they're retiring and people are phasing out. And I think initially the sort of the answer was technology. Like, we're going to bring in systems in place that are going to replace humans to be able to process claims and those related functions. And we're realizing really quick that you need humans in there because you lose all the empathy, that empathy component that seems to be so critical. So I'm throwing a lot at you there, but I guess what are your thoughts on some of that?
Listen, at the end of the day, does technology help? Absolutely, but it's never going to be the end all be all. My always overarching comment is that you're going to have folks that you're going to service that are very tech savvy, and you probably do need to have a tech component. And I talk about it as like my sons, they're younger, they're in their 20s. Do they want to talk to a human? 9 times out of 10, probably not. So you better have the apps and the technology that support their angle. But then, you have my parents, that are, 70s and 80s, they still want that white glove service and or are not tech savvy. And so you better have that in play, right? So you need to have the right people in play to service those folks. And then you probably have us that are stuck in the middle that, depending on the day, will determine which way we go, right? If it's probably ease, we might go the technology, right? If we want something specific, we may go more the white glove. So I think you have to be very agile and have both angles of the equation. So that's probably that component. But with it, that attracts talent, right? So that leads to the talent equation. You could start attracting folks that fit into those different buckets that can really help the industry evolve from a talent perspective. Where I think we don't do a good job, here's what I think we did. And I'm guilty of this too. So we're like, oh, talent. So we started going to the schools and really talking to the kids that were in, young people that were in the risk management programs. My opinion, being on the claim side or services side, it was a little bit of a failure on our point, right? Because most of those folks, if they're going in risk management, they're very heavily underwriting and brokerage focused, which is great, right? But there's a whole piece on the service side that's missing. I think one young student said to me, Danielle, we're lucky if we do a chapter on claims. We don't really know much about the services side. We learn more, go underwriting, go brokerage, which is great for that side of the industry. But there's this whole other big side of the industry that's claims and services. So to me, that was a little bit of a failure on our point. You're not going to probably change their minds based on what they've already gone through education-wise. So we had to really take a step back and shift and thought, okay, what are the folks that are really good at this kind of stuff? And it's probably more the folks that might be in business or criminal justice or liberal arts that maybe either don't know, but are willing to learn something new and take their various skills to come into play. So I think that's a play for us to get out there. But the other play is, to your mind, it might not be a fifth grader because they might not be able to connect the dots, but a high schooler is starting to think about that. High schoolers, it's no different than we're losing sight of the professionals we need for plumbing, electrical business, and making sure that the early career folks or the kids in high schools understand that it's okay to go in those things. Those things are great, financially for them as well. So I just think we need to do a better job collectively as an industry, put away our brands and our competition, and work collectively as an industry and really start speaking to young adults, young people about what we have to offer. It's marketing. It's social media. They're into social media. It's social media. It's getting in front of them in the schools. It's the whole package.
If you were to tell a high schooler or a young college student about opportunities in insurance or claims or workers' compensation, I think that there would be an immediate knee-jerk misperception of someone sitting in a dingy old room with filing cabinets and fluorescent lights at a desk, maybe even like a typewriter or a fax machine.
Exactly.
And I think it would conjure up those images immediately. And I'm not sure why the claims world is so far behind in advancing its public image and persona in pop culture. I mean, it's the way it is. Any movie, any TV show involving claims, it's those images.
Yep.
And I think it really turns off younger talent. They go, I don't want anything to do with that. I want to work with people. And what I want to say is you're going to work with people and you're going to help people.
Yep. Wouldn't it be great? I don't know if you've been to the Comp Laude conference, but wouldn't it be great to take a group of high schoolers to that and have them listen to the stories?
I just got back. I was just there in Huntington Beach. Yeah. It was amazing. I was coming to this conversation thinking about Comp Laude. Imagine if they sat there and saw Victor, who was the fire captain, who led his team and went through those injuries, or Amanda and Dave Repsher, or any of those injured workers to bring them there. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Yep. And now let's think about Kids Chance, right? Where we have kids speak how we as an industry that helped them with their schooling because of what happened to their parents and the impact on the family, and how this industry has stepped up to the plate and really helped them as a family. And then they could connect peer to peer. That would be pretty powerful too.
I've sat on the Kids Chance board of Massachusetts for the last 3 years, and it's folks like you and I who are preaching to each other. But this is the reason I'm doing the podcast, is so they can hear us talk about these things to a wider audience. But you're right. And you said something too that I think is, you said it like 3 or 4 times. And I think it's an amazing attribute from a leader. But you said, we failed, or there's been a failure here. And I think having that level of humility is rare in leadership, but I think it's absolutely critical, because if it doesn't exist, in my opinion, then things don't progress and get better. And I'll tell you where I've failed. I've kind of been in a bubble where I talk to people who are like-minded, and I think it sometimes can be an echo chamber to where we're all doing good stuff and saying the right words, but it doesn't get beyond our sphere of influence, and then no one else can pick up the torch and sort of run with it. So I think, you said one thing that I think is amazing. Imagine having a group of high schoolers sitting in the audience at Comp Laude during an injured worker session. That's huge. Like, I think that's an actual takeaway that we can propose.
We got to go hit up Yvonne and tell her
Yeah, totally. And even getting maybe business leaders who aren't in the comp area, or folks from other industries taking a look at Kids Chance and seeing that mission, just to spread the word wider, because there's a total misperception of workers' compensation. I was flying back from Southern California back to Boston just a couple days ago, and there was a movie on. It was Anchorman 2 with Will Ferrell, and there was some dialogue going on with one of Will Ferrell's colleagues that talked about, I faked a work injury and I got $1 million settlement and I started this restaurant. And I'm sure it got some laughs, but I sat there looking at it going, oh my gosh, there's so much pervasive misperception about workers' compensation in pop culture. And we've talked about it, even in cartoons. I was talking with Kristen Chavez about a SpongeBob episode where, Krusty Krab, the Mr. Krabs faked this work injury. And I think it's either there's an injured worker who's alleged to trying to be milking the system, or there's an unreasonable employer who's trying to mess over a injured worker. And you have this pop culture adversarial misperception set up, and that bleeds into everything. So it's really unfortunate.
Yeah, and back to us, that's where we as an industry have not done a good job of either squelching those, or, to your point, putting out there all the good that we do and all the good parts and what our purpose and our value is. We haven't done a good job with it. We just haven't. And so if we could really figure that out and come together, and it may be as simple as like we just said, bring a group of high school students to Comp Laude, let them hear the stories, right? Let them bring that back to their world. I'm so excited about the generations that are coming up, because they are very community focused, right? They really want to give back. They really want to have an impact. So this is a perfect opportunity. They have the right mindset, right, of giving back. So let's reel them into our world.
Yeah, it seems to be, thankfully, important to the younger generation. It seems to be important to them in their work to find meaning and to have an impact in other people's lives. And to me, it's the perfect industry to exercise that caring muscle. But we just don't do a good job at promoting that aspect. It's going to take people like you who have the analytical side as well as the people side, and to sort of bring those two aspects together. I'm not that creative. I never would have. It would never would have dawned on me. Oh my God! It's the simplest thing in the world. Bring younger people to see this stuff firsthand, so they can experience it.
Yep.
Because if they don't see it, it's just us talking to each other.
I agree with you. Listen, I think Comp Laude is a wonderful, wonderful event, and I remember the first time I ever went was just. I think I cried a lot, but it was a great event. And it was humbling event, right? To say, wow, we are in this really fantastic industry that really is helping people. So I just think it's a great platform for us to cue off of. But to your point, it's all of us in the room.
Yeah.
It's all of us in the room.
Will you talk a little bit about your career trajectory, how you came from, happy accident, landing in comp, and really coming up the ranks as a leader, is president and CEO, when you were on the TPA side. How did that happen?
Sure.
Was it an aspiration of yours, or was it just kind of a natural progression?
Sure. Well, I would say first starting out, being with a company that was growing pretty fast, which was Kemper National Services, part of Kemper, and being part of that journey was fantastic because it did afford a lot of opportunity and working with great people. I would say my quasi mentor at the time was probably more my dad, because I remember him when I got my first promotion, I think to a director level, and he says, "All right, let's have this heart to heart right now, sweetheart." The reason why management is needed is because if all the workers did what they're supposed to do, you're not needed. So don't think just because you got a promotion, you're going to sit back in that very comfy chair with your feet up and eat bonbons, because that's not what it's all about. Now, you really need to figure out a way to make sure you're listening to your people, making sure they're meeting their needs, but also pushing them to be even better. And it was interesting because I'm in my late 20s going, "Oh, is it really that hard? I really need to do all this stuff." But he was just wonderful of putting in my ear to look at things from a different angle, which I do think that helps. Right now they call it EQ, right? I don't think they probably called it EQ back then, but it was really him saying, you don't necessarily have to focus on being smart and all this other point. You have to bring the whole package together. So you really got to focus on improving things, but you got to be there for the people, because at the end of the day, you're in the service industry. So it is all about the people, and what your clients are going to remember. And I preach this today, is probably the worst employee you have, right? Because it's really easy to always remember the complaints and the bad stuff. Very rarely do you get remembered for the good stuff. So if you make sure that worst employee is at the best or are the best, you have a great service organization. So he really pushed me in that realm, which I think also helped inspire me from an aspiration perspective to want to grow as a leader and really be better and better and better. So that kind of jumps me forward to, I remember having a conversation with the CEO at the time, who was Ken Martino. He says, "All right, let's sit down and let's plan out what you want to do." And I looked at him and I said, "Well, I want to be you one day." And he's like, "Perfect. Let's plan that out. I've been waiting for you to say that." So, we sat down and we had a conversation, because I was always so nervous about not knowing claims. Because again, I came up the ranks from the medical management side. So I probably knew enough to be dangerous, but not in the heart of claims. And even back then, it was still about claims. And we built out a plan, and lo and behold, this couple-year plan turned into a very short window, because he decided to roll off, and he went to the organization, said, "She's my successor, and here's why." And so him, again, being, I talk a lot about this on LinkedIn too, is having that supporter at the table, right?
He's big in Kids Chance too. I know that name very well.
He is. Yep, he is. But he pushed me, and I said, "I don't know claims." He says, "You don't know claims. Where you are smart is you make sure you have smart people around you. You know how to look at a process, and you know how to take care of the people. You put all those three elements together, and you've got the winning formula." And so that's what led to me being president and CEO for almost 9 years at Broadspire. And, we took the organization from where it was at that time to where it became. And along the way, I learned that it's important to give back. And so that's been my focus, is really to give back, especially for females. Being the only female global executive at the time sitting at the table, I realized that it's, got to pave the pathway and give back. So that's kind of how it all came together. And I'm very blessed to have had the opportunity.
To that end, and it's where this also, I'm so glad that Deborah led me to you, because we just, towards the end of our podcast discussions, we're talking about the fact that claims has historically been a male-dominated area of industry, specifically workers' compensation. So what were some of the lessons learned, things that you've seen changed, hopefully for the better, across your extensive career coming up as a woman, and what is some advice that you can give to younger women coming up through the ranks in claims and work comp?
Sure. Listen, I have to give a shout out to male colleagues because I really feel there's quite a few of them out there that saw that there needed to be, a blend of diversity from all aspects, and probably even put their necks out there, being, like you said, traditionally maybe male dominated or white male dominated, and really put their necks out there to support, women and other races, other genders, whatever, to support everything all around. And really push forward, which would lead to someone like me having that seat at the table. But also we're great at coaching to say, hey, now that you have this seat at the table, we always remember to pay it forward and, pull other folks like yourself and others up through the ranks. So it's almost like we're talking about creating a cadence or movement around some of the other things we're talking about. It's that same thing. It's creating a cadence and movement around some of the things. So I think that is a big piece of it. Think of risk and insurance, creating the women to watch. If you think back to the day, that didn't exist, right? So that opened up. Look at all these women across the insurance industry that are people to really have on your radar that are trajectorying forward, as well as bringing other women with them or other races with them up through the ranks. Still a lot of work to do there, but I do think the movement is there and is moving forward. And to me, that's a lesson learned. It's paying it forward. It's speaking out and being available to other women and other races that have questions of what can I do different? What helped you? What things worked? What things did you fail at? And you would be like, ooh, not sure I'd do that again. Or did I learn a great lesson? So it wasn't that big of a failure because I learned a great lesson. And 9 times out of 10, the biggest thing is being able to put out there what you've accomplished, being able to know your value, and raising your hand for opportunity. I do tease women. I'm going to say this, Sean. I tease women a lot that we have this mindset, and I would love to know where it came from, is we have to have 100% everything kind of locked down before we proceed to the next. Most women, right? Versus, and I even look at it between my daughter and my sons. If they're 40% ready, 60% ready, they'll take the leap of faith and jump. My daughter, nope, check. Got to make sure all those boxes are checked. Then she'll take the leap of forward. And I push her and say, what are you waiting for? You can learn along the way. It's okay that you don't have all the boxes checked. Talking about different gender differences, that's a big gender difference. So it's getting, I think, females comfortable with raising their hands earlier for opportunities.
And it sounds like, going back in your career, you had a mentor in Ken who said, you don't know claims? That's okay. You're going to figure it out.
You'll figure it out. It's not that hard. It's not rocket science, Danielle. You can figure it out.
Talk to me a little bit about your career path from, claims leadership to where you're at MedRisk now, and kind of what you do there.
Sure. So I really thought I'd probably retire from a perspective of being on the claims side of the house. But I had been the CEO for almost 9 years, and things were going really well. And I had gotten reached in by Ken and Mike Ryan. So there's a pattern there, who said, you're not done yet. You got some more in you. And, I think you should try looking at things from a different angle, from a service perspective, and actually tap into some of the things you might have done in the past, which is on the medical side. And, we're looking for strong leadership to really grow and evolve as an organization. So come on board and give it a shot. And so I did feel like I had a second chapter in me. And back to everything we were talking about in the beginning, Sean, I like to bring value to the table, right? I like to take things and figure out how to make them better. I like working with fantastic people. And MedRisk had a fantastic and has a fantastic reputation around people. You mentioned MedRisk, and one of the first things people said, oh, those people are great. They have great people. So that resonated with me 100%. So came on over as president to dive in and learn more about MedRisk and where there's opportunity to improve, and have been named CEO about 3 months ago now. To really help us take us to the next generation, whether that's expanding services, that's improving how we operate, and bringing the next generation to the fold. And to me, here's where the greatest opportunity is. The average age at MedRisk is fairly young in comparison to my old world, right? And so to me, it's just like, ooh, this is a great opportunity to bring people in and show more what we do outside of MedRisk and bring them even more into the workers' comp opportunity. So it's almost like I've got a captive audience to make that happen.
It's great. I mean, I'll say personally, you have a huge audience in me, and I've been really impressed and have enjoyed your dialogue around leadership. And I think you were well qualified to talk about it. And I'm glad that you do, because I think there's certainly a lack of it from hearing from leaders in the claims and workers' compensation community. And I guess, not to put you on the spot, I would love for you to for us to dig in a little bit about your philosophy on leadership, sort of lessons learned, advice that you can give to up and coming leaders to sort of exercise those chops, and how you view leading teams of people.
So let's first start how I view leading teams of people. It is truly a team effort, and I don't use that loosely, but it does come across as loosely. It's never one person. I know at the end of the day, there's always a person at the helm that, if there needs to be, as I call it, pull the boss card and make the ultimate decision or ultimate accountability. Of course there is. But if you can create a strong team environment where everybody is all in, it's very, very powerful. And it's powerful to the point where you can move an organization forward in an expeditious manner like nothing you've ever seen. And I'm sure you've seen that at Amitros, right? If you have the right leadership at the helm, the right team at the helm. And I'll go back to the Broadspire days of when Ken passed that baton. And I had my dad chomping in my ear saying, listen, it's all about how you bring the team together and the people. Don't forget the people. Don't forget the people. So took a step back and really took a look at who to have at that table, because we had an opportunity and a hole to dig out of. More likely, I'm not going to say more likely. We did. We had a hole to dig out of. And so bringing those folks together and everybody being all in, and I hate to use sports analogies because some people are into sports, some people aren't. I am. But when you have a team that operates as a well-oiled machine, it's amazing what you can accomplish. And that's what occurred at Broadspire. It was an amazing team that forged that thing forward. So my advice there as a leader is put the ego aside, bring your team together, bring the right people at the table. Don't be afraid to have the smarter people around the table with you, or don't be afraid of having different opinions and skill sets around you. Having everyone that yeses you to death is not going to move the needle. You have to have varying opinions. You have to have the push-pull to ultimately get there. So as leaders, we've got to be comfortable with that. And that is a change, because a lot of folks usually surround themselves. We're talking about like-minded people. It's a natural habit to do that. So that's from a leadership perspective. I would say folks early career are coming up through the ranks as leaders. It is about stepping outside of your comfort zone, right? So whether you find mentors, I would say find two people on your board of directors, mentors and supporters. Mentors are the ones you're going to have to listen to you and give you that advice, and are probably the ones that are going to be always in your court no matter what happens. Supporters are going to be the ones that when you prove yourself and or speak up, are the ones that are going to be at the table, have a seat at a table, that are going to say, what about Danielle? I think Danielle would be great for that, and push you forward outside of your comfort zone for other opportunities. And so create that board of directors that's got that well-rounded balance is really going to help you as a leader as you forge forward. So those would be my words of advice. And, reach into people like yourself or like me and to say, hey, can I talk to you and get your opinion or thoughts for a while? Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
What do you see the value of, I think I might know your answer, but I'm not sure. How do you perceive the value of mentorship?
I don't think I'd be where I am today if I didn't have it. So I don't think it's the end all be all, meaning, can you still have a great career without it? Yeah, probably. But having that person that you can speak to when things are either challenging or going a certain way, or you want to do a certain thing, that's really going to be your confidant, that's going to help you through that guided journey is invaluable. I don't know if you could put a price point on it. I know I couldn't. I don't think I would be here today if I didn't think about the mentors that crossed my path from as early as on in my career, being my dad, to the folks that even today, that when I have a challenging moment, even at my level, people are like, at your level, you pick up the phone. Yes, I do. I did it today and said, all right, here's what I'm thinking. Just give me straight on what's your opinion when I say X, Y, Z. And they'll say, you're right. Or, you know what? You're crazy. Take a step back. Why are you thinking that way? Get your list out, or whatever the case may be, but they'll give you that guidance. It's invaluable, Sean. It's priceless.
I get this. I am continuing to get the sense that you, while you're incredibly experienced and knowledgeable in the realm of leadership and claims leadership, that you're incredibly humble, and you also seem to be incredibly connected. So I imagine that when you were at the helm, you knew what was going on at the desk level, and you always had your ear to the ground for your management team. And you said something. You said, and I'm paraphrasing you, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but you said in leadership, you need to set your ego aside. And that seems to be really tough for a lot of leaders to do. Sort of understandably, like you indicated, you still need someone ultimately making a decision at the executive level, or kind of nothing gets done.
Yep.
But to be able to set your ego aside and have those channels of communication open, to be receptive to really understanding what's going on from a tactical level, so you can make the decisions and provide the support to your team that they need, seems to be really valuable. I guess I'm not sure if that's how you operate.
You're paraphrasing correctly. I'm even going to tell you this is, I remember the day that I met Dave North, right? And he became a mentor, and people were like, but he was your biggest competitor. Of course he was. Yes, he was. But why not tap into a person that had already been there, done that? Now, is he going to tell me all his little secrets? Absolutely not. Well, why not have someone that's in it with you, that knows it, that can speak to you and give you guidance because he's already done it? Why not? Yeah, at the end of the day, did we love to compete? Did we love to beat each other out? Absolutely, we did. But we were in the industry together for all the same reasons, and it was to drive value, help our customers, help injured work. We were in there for all the same reasons. So why not have him as someone to talk to? Why not?
Yeah, I get the sense that we're such a small industry and community. Competition plays a big part in stifling collaboration, and
I agree with you.
I don't know why that is. I think having heart-to-heart talks around where we need to go as an industry and how we can improve in no way prevents two entities from competing against each other. But
exactly.
It seems, communication largely gets shut off, other than really surface, hey, how you doing at a conference. It's really sad.
It is sad, because there's enough business for all of us to be successful, right? And at the end of the day, we are going to compete. But to your point, we are a small industry, and why not put our logos aside or brands aside and really everyone be all in, and make our industry even better? Whether it's around talent, and there's common ground, whether it's around talent, right? Whether it's improved process, whether it's like we talked about the injured worker, why not be all in? Why not? What do we got to lose? There's enough business.
There's enough business for everyone.
For everyone.
Where, just to sort of kind of wrap things up, where do you see the industry going, and where do you hope it goes within, let's say, the next decade?
At the end of the day, I do think technology is going to play an important part. I do think it needs to play an important part. Here's my joke. I think of the days back in the claims days, like you said, file rooms, this wall-to-wall files, right? Everything was paper. And I remember when we all started, OCRing and digitizing all that, and you had the people at the desk level saying, oh, well, I need my file. Why are you taking my file away? Why are you taking my file away? And then now you look today, and if we reversed and said, oh, we're going back to paper files, they'd probably cry.
Yeah.
Like, are you crazy? So just look at something that simple, that evolution that needs to occur. So I do think technology plays an important part. I don't think it ever takes away from the fact that we're still a service industry. But back to my spectrum, I think as time evolves and the technology evolves, you have to have both. You have to have the technology that helps service things from a certain perspective, especially those that are very in tune to technology. I view these kids, they grow up almost with their iPhone in their hands. I have a grandson. I think he can work an iPad better than I could work an iPad now, right? And he's 3. But then you also have us and other folks in the generation scheme that, still want, white glove or service component, or depending on the dynamic, want that. So I think you have to be agile again enough to be able to handle both. So technology will play an important part in making sure it plays a part in the right well. So that's where I do think also 10 years from now, if I look 10 years back, 10 years report, I think we are becoming an industry that's better suited to focus on the right things, which is the injured worker. So I do think there'll be more evolution that occurs around that and the focus around mental health, well-being, all well-rounded as organizations that will again lead to those strong outcomes, but have the right focus on the injured worker and helping them and helping their families. And I do think that we'll see the continued evolution about there. So bringing those two together will become an even stronger, more powerful industry than we are today. And we'll always be there. I just feel like we'll always be there. I just think, I try to tell that to young people too, is there's some probably recession-proof type industries to go into: healthcare, education, workers' comp.
Yeah, we're going to be around. With that, your voice is a very important one, and it's been a privilege to talk to you today. And I'd hope to maybe in a year or so have you back on. We'll see how things have changed and evolved. But I really appreciated the conversation and getting to know you.
Well, thanks, Sean. I'm so honored that you sought me out, and I've really enjoyed our conversation. And like we just talked about, hey, if we can spread the word and get people excited about things and doing things different, why not? Let's do it together.
All right. It's settled. Thanks so much, Danielle. Appreciate you being on the podcast.
Take care.
You too. Thanks for joining us for this episode of It's Settled, the Ametros podcast. For more information and episodes, you can visit us at our website at ametros.com. That's ametros.com. Or head over to iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. We hope you enjoyed this episode and look forward to sharing more stories of people overcoming their workplace accidents and bodily injury claims, and those who are working hard to make a difference for them. So it's settled. We'll see you next time.